Warriors, The Sun Trail by Erin Hunter, Chapter 12. Horror almost overwhelmed Greywing, but he threw himself forward to stop any of the other cats from running straight onto the thunderpath. Shaded Moss is hurt, he yelled, blocking Tall's shadow as she appeared. Then he rushed to intercept Jackdaw's cry, who was shouldering his way out of the thorns. Glancing swiftly in both directions, Tall's shadow darted onto the thunderpath and grabbed Shaded Moss by the scruff, dragging him into the long grass. Greywing stopped each cat on their way out of the bushes and shoved them toward where their leader's body lay. Monsters roared past behind him, blurring his vision and filling his ears until they ached. Clear Sky was the last cat to emerge, thrusting Jagged Peak in front of him. His eyes widened when he saw Shaded Moss's body, while Jagged Peak let out a wail. They followed Greywing to the broken cat. Cloud Spots was bending over him, prodding him gently with one paw. After a few heartbeats, he looked up. "He's dead," he announced. "No!" Rainswept Flower threw herself down beside her father, pushing her muzzle into his fur. Gasps of horror and disbelief came from the other cats. Greywing stepped forward and rested his muzzle on Shaded Moss's head. He still felt warm, his fur dusty and ruffled. A thin trickle of blood ran from his nose and mouth, but otherwise he might have been sleeping. Pure grief stabbed through Greywing, sharper than thorns. Shaded Moss brought us so far. How can he leave us now? Clear Sky padded quietly up to Rainswept Flower and gave her a gentle nudge. "Come on," he murmured. "We can't stay here. It's not safe." Rainswept Flower gazed up at him, her blue eyes blazing with anger and grief. "I'm not leaving him to the monsters," she shrieked. "There's nothing you can—" Clear Sky began. Shuttered Eyes interrupted him. "Rainswept Flower is right. This is no place to abandon Shaded Moss. We can carry him across the thunderpath." Greywing cast a glance at the bushes they had come through. He could still smell the dogs. There was no going back that way. Shattered Eyes, Dappled Pelt, and Moon Shadow stepped up to carry Shaded Moss's body. Greywing helped them, while Clear Sky kept watch for monsters. At last, there was a gap in the continual roaring, and they were able to set out across the hard black stone, all the cats crowding anxiously around their leader's body. Greywing saw Shaded Moss's tail dragging limply on the ground, and grief surged over him. "My poor tribe mate." Together, Greywing and the others carried Shaded Moss into a stretch of deep grass under the shelter of a line of bushes. "There are no stones here," Rainswept Flower's voice shook. "We can't bury him like we would in the mountains." Dappled Pelt touched Rainswept Flower's ears gently with her nose. "We can use sticks from these bushes and soft grass. It will be a good enough pelt for him now." Rainswept Flower hesitated for a heartbeat, then gave a tiny nod. She and Dappled Pelt stayed close beside her father while the rest of the cats set off to forage. Greywing noticed Clear Sky walking rigidly, alone, his eyes staring at nothing. "He's thinking about Brightstream," Greywing guessed. She had no stones or sticks to cover her body, wherever she ended up. He wished desperately that he could apologize to his brother, but once again the words stuck in his throat like a tough piece of prey. Gathering some twigs and large leaves torn from a bush, Greywing carried them back to Shaded Moss's body. But as he began to lay them on the dead cat, Rainswept Flower reached out her tail to block him. "Wait," she mewed. "Please, can I stay with him a while longer?" As the cats returned, they set down their bundles of sticks and leaves and sat around Shaded Moss's body. "Goodbye," Rainswept Flower whispered. "You were the best father any cat could have. I'll never forget you." "And no cat could have led us better," Tall Shadow added, tucking her head awkwardly towards Rainswept Flower. "You brought us out of the mountains." When she had finished speaking, other cats began to add their memories. "You taught me how to stalk prey. You kept going when any other cat would have given up. You believed in this journey and made the rest of us believe too." Greywing stretched out his neck until he could touch Shaded Moss's head with his nose. "Thank you for your courage," he mewed. "We will carry on our journey in your memory." "And in Brightstream's," Clear Sky put in, his blue eyes filled with sorrow. Turtletail nodded. "We miss her too," she murmured. "She was strong and confident, but so gentle." She would have been a wonderful mother to your kids, Dapplepelt added. Jagged Pete said nothing, but pressed himself against Clear Sky's side. Night fell, but the cats stayed clustered around Shaded Moss. Pale dawn light began chasing away the stars as Rainswept Flower laid the first twig on her father's body. The rest of the cats followed, covering him in silence, then padded away toward where the sky was brightening, with Rainswept Flower in the lead. Though grief had brought the cats together, they were each locked in their own private misery. Even Jagged Pete had to stop complaining. Tall Shadow still limped on her injured paw, though she gave no sign of pain she must have felt. The sun trail took them across several grassy spaces and through a cluster of two-legged dens. The shrill barking of a dog startled them, but their grief was stronger than fear. All they could manage was a half-hearted scamper to the next wooden wall, scrambling over it to a stretch of open ground on the other side. Looking around, Greywing realized that they had come to the end of the two-legged place. Ahead, High Stones was outlined against the sky. Anticipation tingled through his paws as he saw how close the peaks were. The cats trekked on over tough moorland grass until they reached a copse of pine trees. This might be a good place to hunt, Moonshadow suggested without much enthusiasm. Dapplepelt shook her head. I'm not hungry. The others murmured agreement and flopped down to rest in the shelter of the trees. Is there any point in continuing without Shaded Moss? Turtletail asked Greywing as she settled beside him. Should we just give up and go home? Greywing was startled by the strength of feeling that rushed through him. No, he protested. We've come too far. How would it be fair to Brightstream and Shaded Moss if this journey was all for nothing? Hawkswood, crouching nearby, turned her head and mewed sharply. You didn't want to come in the first place, remember? Greywing forced himself to respond calmly. Maybe not, but I've come this far, just like the rest of you. This will be my new home, too. The setting sun covered the ground in scarlet light and cast long shadows from the pine trees. The cats settled in the copse for the night, curling up among the soft pine needles at the base of the trunks. Greywing dreamed that he was snug in his old sleeping hollow in the cave, but gradually a wail of grief pierced through the thunder of the waterfall. Shaded Moss! Shaded Moss! Greywing jerked awake. A couple of tail lengths away, Rainswept Flower was thrashing around, calling out for her father in her sleep. Compassion surged through Greywing. Rising to his paws, he padded over to Rainswept Flower and sat beside her, stroking his tail gently over her flank. Her cries sank to a quiet whimper, and then to silence. He stayed at her side, his heart as heavy as a cloud weighed down with rain. Through the branches of the pine trees, he could see the moon already swelling to full again. We've been traveling for nearly an entire turn of the moon. Will our journey ever end? During the night, the wind picked up, rattling the brittle branches overhead. The noise and chill aroused one cat after another. The moon and stars give us enough light to see, Tall Shadow mewed, stifling a yawn. Why don't we get going? With every cat in agreement, they padded through the pine trees and out onto rough, bristly grass, flattened by the strong wind. The ground sloped more steeply upward to where High Stones was a faint dark outline against the night sky. Greywing paused and took in deep breaths of the cold air. Hope crept into his heart. This feels like home. Glancing over his shoulder, he looked across the landscape that unfolded behind them in the first faint light of dawn. A dark, uneven smudge lay against the horizon. That's the mountains. Wow, we've come so far. I can't believe this. Beside him, Jackdaw's cry echoed his thoughts. I never imagined the world was this big. The ground grew steeper still, with boulders poking through the tough grass, but the cats leaped confidently from rock to rock. This is harder than it used to be, Cloud Spots puffed. All the good eating has made me heavier. The cats spread out as the grass gradually thinned, and they found themselves padding along on stone. A sense of achievement tingled through Greywing as he scrambled up the last few tail lengths and stood at the top of the pointed stones. We made it, Turtletail announced as she joined him. The peaks were lower and narrower than their mountain home, but Greywing rejoiced in their familiarity. He could see that the others, even Rainswept Flower, were regaining a little bit of their optimism. As they stood, looking out across the land beyond, the sun broke above the far horizon, flooding the landscape below them with golden light and stretching its warm rays right up to their paws. We have reached the end of the sun trail. He looked down into the pool of sunlight and saw empty expanses of grass, broken by patches of dense woodland that would offer shelter, a winding river reflecting the sunlight. Is that where the other rogues live? He wondered aloud. Those all look like places where cats could settle. I think this could be our new home, Dapplepelt murmured. Yes. Falling Feather gave her a nudge. There's a river for you to catch fish and for me to fall into. And trees, Clear Sky added. There'll be plenty of prey. Greywing hoped his brother didn't expect to be living under the trees. I'd much rather stay in the open spaces where I can breathe. But in spite of the cat's optimism, a mist of sadness still hung over them. I wish Bright Stream and Shaded Moss had made it this far, Greywing thought. Tall Shadow meowed. Come on, let's go explore. Hopping down from the topmost crag, still limping on her injured paw. When we get there, I'm going to find some herbs that will heal that paw, Dapplepelt declared. Tall Shadow took the lead as they headed down the slope. Jagged Peak, she snapped at the kit as the kit scurried ahead of her. Get your tail back here. You don't know what danger might be waiting for us. Jagged Peak waited for the rest to catch up and padded alongside Greywing, his ears flat and a chastened look on his face. Their path wound between huge boulders that cut off the view of the land below. As they emerged again onto a more open slope, Jackdaw's cry let out a startled meow. Look over there, he exclaimed. Turning, Greywing saw a massive hole in the mountainside, gaping open like a mouth rimmed with jagged teeth. Jackdaw's cry ran lightly up to it and peered inside, meowing loudly and listening to the echo. Wow, it's really deep. Tall Shadow padded after him to the entrance and took a brief look inside. We're not rabbits, she sniffed. We don't live underground. Come on. Dapplepelt caught up to pad beside Tall Shadow as they moved off again. You really shouldn't walk much farther on that injured paw, she murmured. Tall Shadow nodded. Okay, but let's get to the stretch of moorland at the edge of the forest. The stony surface gave way to rough grass and then to softer enclosed stretches dotted with sheep. They were so familiar now that the cats ignored them, though they still kept to the bushes that edged the spaces, all their senses alert for dogs or monsters. Another two-leg place, Cloud Spots pointed out as a cluster of red stone dens came into sight. I can smell dog, Moonshadow announced, wrinkling his nose in disgust. Then we don't go near it, Tall Shadow responded, leading them around in a wide circle. Greywing looked at the moorland sloping up ahead of them. His legs suddenly felt heavy and his paws ached as he thought of taking a long rest. I'm tired of traveling. Even if this isn't our new home, we should be able to stay here for a few sunrises, long enough to heal our wounds and fill our bellies. The moorland seemed just beyond their whiskers when a familiar roar assailed Greywing's ears. Oh no, Quickwater exclaimed, another thunder path. Moving cautiously, the cats picked their way through a thin line of bushes and, at a command from Tall Shadow, halted beside the thunder path. Greywing stared at it in horror. Monsters raced up and down in both directions, growling and letting out long hooting sounds like owls, but louder than any owl he had ever heard. This is the biggest one yet. How are we supposed to get across? Glancing at his friends, he saw that many of them were trembling, the memory of Shaded Moss's death fresh in their minds. I don't want to cross, Falling Feather whimpered, crouching down with her nose on her paws. Can't we stay on this side? Hawk Swoop asked. Back on High Stones, there was plenty of space up there. Yes, but no prey, Clear Sky pointed out. We need trees, bushes, and long grass to feed us all. Well, you can cross without me, Falling Feather mewed stubbornly. Shuttered Eyes patted up to her and rested his tail on her back. We've come this far together, he told her gently. We're not leaving any cat behind. I'll look after you, I promise. Falling Feather rose shakily to her paws. Greywing noticed that Turtletail was looking terrified, and he brushed his pelt against hers. You'll be okay, he murmured. Turtletail flattened her ears. It's too soon after Shaded Moss. Greywing nodded. I know, but the stone trail has led us here. It's just one more obstacle, that's all. Quivering, the cats gathered at the edge of the thunder path. The black stone extended in front of them, the far side looking a long way away. Greywing stretched his brother Rat watched his brother, admiring Clear Sky's courage as he ventured close to the path and scanned it in both directions, leaping back just in time as the monster roared past. Okay, Shattered Ice meowed. Let's split up. Clear Sky, you lead the first group and then keep watch for the rest of us at the other side. Quickwater, Tall Shadow, Cloud Spots, and Jackdaw's Cry go with him. As the cats he had named gathered together, he went on. Rainstorm Flower, Dapplepelt, Turtletail, and Falling Feather, come with me. And Greywing, you lead the last group with Jagged Peak, Hawkswoop, and Moonshadow. Greywing nodded in response and braced himself for the crossing. Every cat seemed to feel better now that Shattered Ice had come up with a plan. Clear Sky led his group to the edge of the thunder path and waited for a glittering blue monster to pass. The sound of its roaring died away into silence. Now! Clear Sky yowled. His group sprang forward and raced across the thunder path, their paws barely skimming the surface. Clear Sky ran alongside Tall Shadow, making sure that she didn't lag behind. They reached the other side with heartbeats to spare before the next monster appeared. Greywing lost sight of them in the long grass. Well, that wasn't so bad, Shattered Ice declared, as he flicked his tail to wave his own group up to the edge. He and his cats had to wait a long time before the next gap in the continuous lines of monsters. Clear Sky reappeared at the other side and signaled to them with his tail. Okay, now, he yowled. The cats were leaping forward onto the thunder path when Clear Sky let out another shriek. No, go back! With screeches of alarm, the cats retreated, Shattered Ice grabbing Falling Feather by the scruff and hauled her out of danger as a bright red monster appeared out of nowhere, flashing past with a snarl. Dung Eater, Turtletail yowled after it. She seemed to have forgotten how nervous she had been. Shattered Ice and his group approached the edge of the thunder path again, more cautious than ever after their narrow escape. But this time, the path cleared quickly, and no monster threatened them as they raced across. Greywing gestured with his tail to gather his own group together, trying to force his paws to stop shaking. He lined up Jagged Peak, Moonshadow, and Hawkswoop at the edge of the thunder path. Stooping, he pressed his ear to the stone surface, but he couldn't sense any vibrations. Okay, now! With his group hard on his paws, he bounded onto the thunder path, but as they reached the halfway point, he heard the roar of an approaching monster, growing rapidly louder until the sound filled the whole world. Faster, Greywing screeched. He had almost reached the end when Clear Sky leaped out from the grass, barged past him, and headed for the middle of the thunder path. Horrified, Greywing skidded to a halt and turned to see Jagged Peak crouching in the path of the monster, frozen with terror. Clear Sky scooped him up by his scruff and leaped back into mighty strides. Just as the gigantic monster thundered past. You stupid, stupid kid, Clear Sky snarled, dropping Jagged Peak and glaring at him. Don't you know by now not to stop in the middle like that? Jagged Peak cowered down into the grass as if trying to hide from his brother's fury. I'm sorry, he stammered. It's my fault too, Greywing meowed. I should have realized he wasn't with me. Before his little mate could respond, Quickwater pushed her way forward. Clear Sky, calm down, she snapped. It was a scary moment for all of us. Bending over Jagged Peak, she gave his head for a couple of quick licks. Come on, she murmured. You can walk with me for a bit. Jagged Peak struggled to his paws, giving Quickwater a grateful glance. Every cat was shaky, their fur fluffed and dirty. They stumbled up the grassy slope in front of them, their excitement gone, their courage almost spent.